Check, check.
Good morning to everyone present here. I am Soumya Raj, Assistant Professor of Law at Kelly Law College, and it is my privilege to welcome you all to Plenary Session 4 of this conference. The theme before us today, Algorithmic Authority and Due Process, Governance of Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning in Enforcement and Judicial Process, sits at a crossroad that the legal profession can no longer afford to approach cautiously. Algorithmic systems are already shaping how laws are enforced, how they raise of transparency, accountability, and preservation of due process are not future concerns, they are present ones. This session brings together practitioners and experts whose work spans law, technology, and governance, and I have no doubt that the deliberations here will be both rigorous and illuminating. I extend a warm welcome to our distinguished chair, our esteemed speakers, and each one of you in the audience. Your engagement with these questions is what makes discussions like this meaningful. It is now my honor to introduce the chair of this session, Mr. Aishwarya Sharma, Business System Manager at Aranya. Mr. Sharma is a cross functional professional with a rare combination of legal training and deep technological expertise. He currently works with Homeland Security Investigations and Federal Bureau of Investigation on anti counterfeiting initiatives, where he manages seized digital infrastructure and supports criminal investigation protocols. Works that places him at the very intersection of law and technology that the sessions requires. His career spans AI and machine learning, research, full stack development in patent intelligence systems, and leadership in building a US government sales practice with multiple secured federal contracts. He has also served as an assistant professor of law at Kelly Law College, Bengaluru, a background that speaks to his ability to think through legal questions with both academic rigor and practical depth. He holds a master's degree in comparative law from Ajim Premji University and a bachelor's degree in law from Government Law College, Bengaluru. A warm welcome to you, sir. We are fortunate to have with us today two speakers whose work brings this session themes into very sharp focus. Our first speaker is Mr. C.K. Nandakumar, Senior Advocate designated by High Court of Karnataka in 2021, an alumnus of NLSIU Bangalore. Mr. Nandakumar has built a formidable practice in corporate, commercial, and arbitration law. He appears regularly before the courts and tribunals across the country and is a fellow of Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. He is known not only for strength of his legal arguments but for his ability to render complex legal question accessible, a quality that I'm certain will mark his contribution to this session. Welcome, sir. Our second speaker is Mr. Rishabh Desai, advocate and principal associate at Keystone Partners, Advocates and Solicitors, Bengaluru. With close to 7 years of experience in civil and commercial litigation, Mr. Desai has developed a sharp focus on complex dispute resolution. A graduate of ILS Law College, Pune, he has consistently demonstrated analytical rigor and precision in advocacy that has taken him from junior associate to principal associate. His perspective on how algorithm process interact with litigation practice will add a grounded practitioner dimension to our sessions today. Welcome, sir. I now request the chair to take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you for the introductions, lovely introductions, by the way. Uh, I welcome, on behalf of our organizers, everyone present here, and I hope you've all had a good first plenary session. You've got to learn a lot. This session is also similar in nature. It's power packed. There's quite a lot that we're going to explore throughout this session, but I'm just going to set the stage for what is to come and hand it over to our esteemed panel here. So I've got some facts and pointers that I'm going to tell you a little bit to set the stage and also set the stakes, right? So uh, today our topic is heavily focused on AI. So uh, we are going to discuss aspects of how AI is being applied, used in various aspects of judicial process as well as enforcement. Both of our panel members are going to cover a specific aspect of it, both enforcement and judicial process. What I would like to orient our audience here today, right now, is a very specific aspect of the theme that our discussion is going to be centered around, and that is LLMs and generative AI. So, AI is an umbrella term, as we all know, and the most recent disruptive technology that has come out in this domain is generative AI. So, our discussion will focus around that technology today. Now, before we get into the specifics of it and various nuances of it, I would like to draw all of your attention to one key aspect of this AI technology, right? So, we have all grown up with AI, right? And I'm sure anyone who has read a little bit on AI would agree with me that even tools and utilities as small as a calculator and the algorithm behind it can be classified as AI. But the thing is, since we have grown up and our interaction with AI technology has always been with an AI which is deterministic in nature. And what do I mean by deterministic, right? So let's think of this distinction. So we can classify AI into two types. One is a deterministic AI and other one is a probabilistic AI. So a deterministic AI means, before I explain, I would like to get a sense of uh, the room and whether we know the distinction between deterministic or probabilistic AI, or whether we have heard of these terms before. I would just like to see a show of hands. Have you heard of these terms, deterministic and probabilistic, in context of AI? If yes, please, I'm not going to ask you. Obviously, it's not a class, so don't worry. Nice. Nice to see. I just wanted to get a sense of the room. So, a deterministic AI or any deterministic system is the one that produces exactly the same output given the same input, right? So, you type 2 plus 2 in a calculator, you get 4 always. You'll not say it's obviously 4, or it will not say yes, it's 4 or whatever, right? It's only going to say 4. You type it 1000 times, it's going to say the same. So that is given 2 inputs or 3 inputs or whatever number of inputs. If you keep the input same, the output is always going to be the same. That is how we have interacted with AI for a very long time, specifically people who are a bit older like me. So now with the commercialization and democratization of generative AI, it is completely different. It's completely the opposite. It is probabilistic in nature. By that, I mean, given the same input, the output does not necessarily have to be the same. It's going to be different all the time. You say hi to ChatGPT 50 times, you can't really guarantee that it's going to reply with the same response, right? So it's probabilistic. Generative AI in specific is probabilistic in nature. So what it does is basically predicts the next word based on the words that have come before. That's all it does. It's a very good word predictor, and it's called token in technical terms. So we are working with a probabilistic technology, and that comes with its own challenges. So, well, this is what we have to look at. So there is already a lot of there have already been a lot of tools developed, and I'm going to focus specifically on the judicial process today. So Supreme Court of India has developed quite a lot of tools using generative AI in specific. So I have a list of tools. I'm just going to read out what are the tools, right? So it has Supace for case research, then it has Suvas for translation, it has Teres for transcription, And then it has LEGRA for legal research. It's called as Legal Research Analysis Assistant. And this last tool that we are talking about is basically like an advanced version of ChatGPT. So it has access to all the Supreme Court precedents and documents, and judges can actually type queries and it comes up with responses. It could list cases, it could give analysis. Supreme Court has actually published details of this platform, of what it does. Um, but now we have to look at the nuances, right? The platform Legra works on generative AI, and which is a probabilistic tool. So we've all heard of some of the pitfalls. For instance, it tends to hallucinate. We all know. Sometimes it makes up things that really don't exist. But as long as it sounds coherent based on what came before, yes, it has done its job. It's not actually made to give right answers, it's just made to generate a very coherent reading text. And we all know about it. These are well documented now. Hallucinations, right? So these kind of mistakes. But there are some more subtler issues with it surfacing recently. And there is some discussion starting to happen around those as well. For instance, sycophancy. Sycophancy is basically a tendency to agree, always, regardless of whether position is correct or not. So, for instance, imagine having an assistant who always tends to agree with you, right? Their training has been to agree with you. So ask them a question and they would be more willing to give you an answer that agrees with your existing position than, countering you on some point. So this is the kind of tendencies AI models tend to have. So we can totally imagine a scenario where a judge types a query and the query basic AI model interprets it and actually responds in a way that confirms with the query rather than giving a very measured kind of an output. Obviously, there are ways you can control that, but the sensitization needs to happen, right? Every AI model has a different sycophancy level. So, uh, hallucinations we already know of, and I have a list of facts here. I'm just going to read it out to help you understand the scale of this. December 2024, we have reports of Bangalore Bench of Income Tax Appellate Tribunal relying on AI. It's a 669 crore dispute, the Buckeye Trust matter. And it cited Supreme Court judgments that did not exist, right? And then that order was recalled because of this very reason. Then January 2025, we have trial court judge in Karnataka citing precedents generated by ChatGPT, but those precedents don't even exist. Both the parties confirmed that none of these precedents actually exist. August 2025, same error committed by the trial court of Andhra Pradesh. Then we have September 2025, a petition filed before Delhi High Court, and it was withdrawn after the opposing counsel actually demonstrated that citations were fabricated. October 2025, Bombay High Court quashed 27.91 crore income tax assessment after assessment was found to have relied on non-existent judicial decisions. So these are some of the examples that have become mainstream. And there are more, but I just picked some of these. Imagine the number that have not been analyzed yet and found out yet. So this problem is quite rampant. And it's not that the judiciary does not know about it. The Supreme Court released a white paper on Legra, the tool that I just spoke about, and it does acknowledge this as a problem. That means judges are being sensitized about this being a problem. So the point is not to argue against the adoption of these technologies. The point is to be well sensitized about how these technologies work, what are their pitfalls, and uh, tailor your use case accordingly. Knowing its capabilities, you should know what it can be relied on, what it cannot be relied on. And there's one more thing I would like to point out before closing and handing it over to panelists is currently there's a lot of adoption that we are seeing right now. Government of India, if you go to PRS, uh, if you go to PIB, you will see a lot of pressers put out by the government announcing AI technologies adopted in various aspects. Now, the pattern that I have noticed is it's the regime currently is very outcome oriented, that we have used this tool, these are its benefits, and this is what the tool does, which is great. But I think from public institutions, when they use these kind of technologies, uh, my personal opinion is we should expect a bit more transparency into how exactly what is the technical architecture behind these tools. For instance, Legra, what is the model that it uses, what exact implementation does it use, RAG, which is a retrieval augmented generation, or some other. So we need more details specifically from public institutions when they adopt technologies like this, like the probabilistic in nature, so that it can be audited, because that's the crux of uh, judicial process, right? You go into it and you try to audit how outcome was arrived at, and judges are going to rely on these kind of technologies, then we as public should really have uh, more insight into how these technologies are put together. So that is an ask. Before leaving, I would just like to leave you with one sentence from Microsoft's terms in use. You've all heard of Copilot? Yes. You probably used it also, given how persistent Microsoft is in pushing it in their Windows. So, if you go to, even today, if you go to terms and conditions, terms of use of Copilot, it reads, I'm reading verbatim. So it says, Copilot is for entertainment purposes only. It can make mistakes and may not work as intended. Don't rely on Copilot for important advice. Use Copilot at your own risk. This is verbatim I'm reading. You can actually open it today and you can read it. So, again, want to be clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not saying AI has no role. It has place, yes. But I'm also saying that transparency is not optional. So, the very people who built these technologies are telling you not to rely on it. So it's up to us now to decide how much we should rely on it, right? So that is what I will leave it with. And I would like to now invite Mr. Rishabh here. He's going to take us through again a specific aspect of the topic today. So over to you, sir.
So again, now I am no expert on technology. In fact, in my office, I'm the last person to use technology. Uh, so I was looking at this topic, and I was thinking, as to what should be, because it's a very broad topic in the sense that today we are going to cover anywhere from. So the focus is, of course, on where you can use this AI in the judicial process. That's a very vast topic, which of course nobody can cover in an hour. So I just wanted to take one step back and understand what what is law as lawyers, or future lawyers, how should we be looking at this new technology? Because all of us have experience of people in our office who have been practicing for maybe over 20 years, who when they were in college there was maybe a couple of desktops, and these search tools were not there, and then today we cannot imagine a time without your SCC and your Manupatra for our research. So while I feel a lot of us are reluctant to adopt technology, we must understand that AI is here today. Uh, it is here to stay. So the question is, what do we take from it, and how do we use this? To what extent do we rely on this? As so, just before we get into the specifics, I feel as lawyers, law students, our responsibility is a little more than just the use case of technology. our idea has to always be as to look at these technologies and see how whether they violate rights. Because if we just look at these as tools, that doesn't serve our purpose. The best example is the Aadhaar judgment and Justice Chandrachud's dissent in the Aadhaar judgment, saying that yes, you can come up with technology that uh, vastly solves a lot of problems, but on this side we have to look at whether it violates the rights of people. So of course he was dealing with the right to privacy, and the larger bench judgment of Justice Puttaswamy's judgment on privacy, where it lays down the three criteria. One is the need, because when I speak of need today, someone was telling me the environmental impact of AI. Now I was very shocked. I thought, what is environmental impact of AI? Because somebody who's not from the technology background, we're very surprised. So apparently the amount of water needed to preserve these servers is so immense that every time you use chat gpt or any of these models, just to just for fun, as they say, to put a query and see, apparently there is a massive environmental damage that is happening. So these are all, so as lawyers we have to step into these things and see that the effect of these actions. So one is the need. So of course this is when you want to invade somebody's privacy. These are the three tests. One is the need, one is the legal basis, and the most important is proportionality. When you talk about proportionality, what are you trying to achieve, and are you achieving that in the least intrusive manner? So when we look at AI today, so before we come to its impact on your criminal jurisprudence and how to use it on that front, uh, so in the entire judicial mechanism, what you really want to use AI for? So one is your discriminative AI, which is typically a one or two function AI, where you say, okay, do XYZ. It does just that, in the sense that let us for example, let's say we talk about case management, that but these sort of cases should be sorted in this particular way, and it restricts itself to that. And then you have your generative AI, which learns from the data that you put to it, and evolves patterns from the data that is put to it. Now, of course, your discriminative AI has massive use case, because a lot of our judges spend a lot of time on the administrative side doing a lot of work that they should not be doing, in terms of your, largely your case management, and has somebody filed this, what, and a lot of people in the registry spend time on scrutinizing petitions, and is this in order? So technology can be used on that side to improve a lot of processes. So that is one use case of AI, which makes things seamless. And of course, e-courts to a large extent is in their third phase. They say they are going to be using AI for a lot of this. Now we come to this generative AI aspect of it, which is where the concern really lies. So one is, does it impact judicial discretion? Now, I was just seeing the Gujarat High Court recently came up with a policy on AI. Uh, a lot of that policy is what you should not be doing. So it's a policy for judicial officers, what the judicial officers should not be doing with AI. And of course, it has a lot of parts saying that, you can use it to modify your language, better your language of an order, better, for legal research. But of course, so the end is that the accountability lies with you. So you keep cross-checking everything that it throws at you. Uh, but there was a very, very interesting paragraph that I want to read from that policy, and it was great that they added this paragraph. It says, importance of human conscience and values in decision making. The judiciary stands as a final bastion of impartial justice, where human judgment guided by conscience reason, law, and constitutional values must remain inviolate. In an era of rapid technological advancement, artificial intelligence offers tools that promise advanced, fast, easy research of judgments, ratio, and settled legal principles. Further, it offers tools which may improve administrative efficiency. Yet, the core of adjudication, the weighing of evidence, interpretation of law, application of legal principles to facts, exercise of discretion, and delivery of reasoned decisions belongs exclusively to the domain of the human mind. Any encroachment upon this domain risks undermining public confidence, introducing hidden biases, generating unverifiable outputs, or eroding the sacred principle that justice is administered by accountable human beings driven by conscience and values under rule of law. So ultimately, in a society governed by rule of law, we look at and this is where this AI's problem of the black box phenomenon comes. The black box phenomenon is that we do not understand what the reasoning of the AI to come to a decision is. So you cannot work back. When a human makes a decision, of course, there may be a lot of human decisions you may not be able to explain, but it is more open to review, challenge in appeal, etc. Because when a human makes that error, it is identifiable. The problem with this black box phenomenon is you don't know what it is going back to. Like, what is the decision making process of that AI? So a lot of people are coming up with something called XAI or explainable AI. But that also, I don't know how far it takes us. So in this aspect of your exercise of discretion, there are a few issues that crop up, in the sense that I'll just give a few very few examples. Let us say, and the US is a great example because they've implemented some software called Compass for sentencing, and an audit of that showed that it gives harsher sentencing to people of certain color, race, etc. Now, nobody is saying that these biases don't creep in when judges exercise discretion. But the data set that so the problem with AI is the data you're going to be feeding it today is the existing data. And if the existing data is bad, AI makes it much worse. In the sense that if it sees a pattern that a certain class of people are discriminated, it will perpetuate that pattern. And in fact, AI has the potential to perpetuate that pattern to an extent that its reasoning will not look very bad. For example, I'm sure we come across a lot of people today, especially, who say, look, India functions despite the constitution. Constitution is the biggest problem of this country. A lot of people say this. Of course, these are is a very myopic view that, we are functioning despite the constitution and the constitution is a huge hindrance in the progress of the country. But imagine if people holding this view start coding this and creating this AI. What happens is AI understands that constitution is the basis of any decision that I have to give. But the bias is to not following those constitutional values. So it comes up with decisions that look constitutional, look sound in law, but in effect, it is undermining values. So this is the discretion element that we do not want to let go of and give to AI, because it will not only incorporate biases and prejudices that exist, but perpetuate in a way that we cannot really control them. So when we look at, so there are a lot of, so when I come to decision making, of course, today the position everybody holds is decision making cannot be delegated to AI. But yes, there are some sort of very, your motor vehicles matters. Simple CPC matters where, I'll just give you an example where we had recently where a judge mistook the provision of law under which an application was filed, applied completely different law and rejected an application. So these are things that AI can solve for, because this does not require applying some great principles that, because the law on, let's say, things like production of documents, etc., is well settled. So maybe these are avenues in which this can be explored, of course, with a human check. But when it comes to when it comes to decisions on matters which impact human beings, liberty, I would say to go so far as to give it the power to make a decision is wrong. When it comes to, so one aspect of it is the decision making. Why I came to why it is so, it's not ideal. And there is the first element of crime prevention where you have surveillance, etc., which there's a larger bench looking into whether if you're letting somebody on bail, can you ask them to give them their WhatsApp live location, because that's a huge invasion of privacy. So imagine the surveillance AI can uh, get into and violate your rights. So those are the two extremes. One is the conclusion and one is your initial crime prevention, where there are huge issues in the use of AI. Everything in the middle, when it comes to your investigation, your presentation of the material gathered in investigation, analysis of data, etc., with good checks and balances. In fact, the biggest problem that we have today in our country in criminal law is the chain of custody of evidence, your blood samples, or a whole host of things that just get polluted and then people get acquitted or, wrongly convicted. So AI to solve for all of those problems, yes, with where there's a check and balance, is an ideal use case for AI. So these are just some thoughts on it. I'm again, as I said, I don't understand AI as well as a lot of people. So this is just my perspective on what the use cases could be in the judicial process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rishabh. That was quite interesting. The amount of aspects you've covered. You've spoken about environmental impact. You've spoken about the human side of it. That particularly stuck with me as to how it is an exercise of human conscience and morals, and uh, this is something which is not discussed often. So thank you for bringing it. Yeah. Now I would like to invite Mr. Nand Kumar. He has had the perspective of starting his legal research and legal journey from the era of Supreme Court case CDs and library research all the way to AI now. So he can actually enlighten us quite a lot on what his take is on this. So, sir, over to you.
To be doing something with AI, every one of you will go back and put it on your resume that you attended a conference on AI. I have had the misfortune of never being able to do that. But well, it's what it is, right? Now, the problem that I am faced with in some ways is the way in which we were taught, the way in which we learned is quite different from how many of you approach learning or education or whatever. I'm going to try and bridge that gap to the extent that I can and offer you some insights. I am also going to go, after I finish telling you a little about AI and some of its pitfalls, some of its uses, like Rishabh pointed out. I'll also go off topic and tell you a few things about what you could and could not be doing. And I hope some of your professors can forgive me for what I'm going to tell you. It's possible that they'll never invite me again, but we'll deal with that when that comes. Let me start with SEC Online. Mr. Sharma is absolutely correct. When I joined National Law School, was in 1996. The only reason we had SEC Online then was it had just been released and it was insanely expensive. The only reason we had it then was that the person who was running EBC, that's Eastern Book Company, his son was a student. And therefore, he had got an installed one. You needed a dongle, which back in the day had to be put into the computer. We didn't even, it was, I'm not joking, but before the era of even your pen drives. So you did not have pen drive ports on computers. You had floppy disks, and in a few computers, you had CDs. That's the era in which I went to college. Uh, Things changed somewhere along the. In fact, initially we did not. We had a ERNet, Education Research Network. It was called ERNet or ERNet. Email connection. I think I got that in my second or third year. If I'm unable to remember now. And I was very thrilled that I had an email connection, email account, but it was a Linux based account. So, you couldn't go on. There was no Google when I joined college. Google's algorithm is actually very instructive before we get into AI. And I think you must take a pause when you're all using Claude and Chat GPT and whatever else you all are using. Take a pause, take a step back, and think about what Google is actually doing. There was this game we used to play when possibly in my fifth year of college or just after I graduated. I can't remember now. There was a game we used to play on Google. It was called Google Whack. Okay. The idea is that you take two words, two valid words which are in the Oxford Dictionary, search for them such that the search result yields only one result or one link. It's actually a lot tougher than you think it is. And obviously, the lower the number of hits you get, the winner, whatever. I mean, some metric we had of scoring. And if you get a Google Whack, if you get one, you get actually one hit. So if I use the word, say, for example, Aishwarya and Rishabh, assuming both are valid words in Oxford dictionary, and you get only one search result which links the two, which happens to be the KLE website saying that there is this conference, well, you get a point or whatever it is, right? Why am I offering you this example? Now think a lot about how Google worked. Google's algorithm kept developing over the years by becoming better at searching, and it is inarguably the best search engine, well, at least outside of military application, the best search engine in the world. Why is that not enough? And that's really where you had artificial intelligence and robotics coming in. How many of you know that in the heart of Bangalore, there is a DRDO center called Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics and has been around for at least 35 years. How many of you know about it? How many of you have heard about this center? 0? 1? All right. See, this is the thing. We are all talking about AI today, and it's actually something that's been in use in military and defense application for many years now. It was for them a necessity. Is AI a necessity for us? I think it's an important question. Do you think AI is a necessity? Do you think Google is a necessity? Using a Google search engine, is it a necessity? How many of you think it is? We'll forget about AI, we'll come back to that. How many people think having Google search engine is a necessity for the study of law? Yes, put your hands up, please. So practically, like at least 65-70% of this room thinks so. I'm now going to tell you a side story. I performed this experiment with their consent and their knowledge and acquiescence on 4 students who wanted to do an internship with me. And I was making the point to them, and let me take a minute and tell you how we did research back in the day. I'm not for a minute saying I was class topper and all, I wasn't, so don't get me wrong. But when I started working, when I started practice, I had to do more research than all of my 5 years in college put together within a year of working in litigation. And so I think I made up for all the chilling I did in college, I made up very quickly. But I digress. The question that I put to them was, how effective is book research versus Google research? in terms of learning. I'm using this word learning because it's a common theme that you will find that's in LLM, that is large, not your masters in law, but large language models, right? There is learning there of a very different kind. It is learned by that model. It is not what the model has learned is learning. You are learning in that you are adding to your fund of knowledge, wisdom, assimilation, ability. Your brain is getting sharper, better, etc., etc. I'll tell you how we used to do research. I am willing to bit crude, but I'm willing to put money on the table that many of you haven't even heard of this term called a law digest. How many of you have actually used a law digest? Some of you have, very few would have, hardly 2-3 people. What is a law digest and what is a commentary? So if I had a matter that related to, say, 106 of the Transfer of Property Act, how many of you can tell me what is 106 of the Transfer of Property Act without looking at your phones? See, I think I've made my point. It relates to leases, okay, and how a lease should be executed. Now, when I would have a matter on 106 of the Transfer of Property Act, I would have to read the provision from a bare act. I'm talking about historical research, not current day research. Then go to a commentary. Read up what the commentary says, because that typically also extracts from case law just a 1 or 2 line sort of a note. The ones that you find interesting, you make a note of what the footnotes are, make a note of all those citations, okay? And then you go to a digest. A digest is a compendium of case law with a little more annotation than a commentary. You look at that, you will get all the cases for, all the cases against. And importantly, when it comes to 106 of the Transfer of Property Act, it will have around 50-60 subheadings, which will tell you all the different facets of that one provision. I'm not talking about the entire Transfer of Property Act. Once you've gone through that, you have a better sense of what all 106 of the Transfer of Property Act could deal with. Is it registered? Is it not registered? Is it agricultural or manufacturing? Is it not? Is it a month-to-month tenancy? What is a month-to-month tenancy? What is notice? To what extent does notice have to be? What is a contract to the contrary? When is it valid? So many things. Then you go and actually take out those judgments, read those judgments, then find the ones that are helpful to you, find the ones that are diametrically opposed to you, distinguish those, use these, make a synopsis, tender it in court, argue your case. This is how we used to do research. Is it laborious? Is it time inefficient? Absolutely yes. So you're right. Today, what you all are doing is far more efficient. But I ask you this question, how much have you learned? I'll give you an example of 2-3 provisions. 106 of the Transfer of Property Act is an excellent example. I must have read that provision in the last, 25-26 years of my practice, nothing less than about 250-300 times. I mean, I'm being very conservative in my estimate. Nothing less than that. It could be well over 1,000 times that I've read that provision. The commentary in Ramaya's Companies Act on Operation Mismanagement, 396, 397 of the old Companies Act, I must have read cover to cover. That's about 110 odd pages, at least 10 times, different portions of it, any number of times. What it does is that it gives me a perspective about how the law operates in a given area in a way that Google can't do. Why can't Google do it? And that's why I went back to how Google operates. Google can't do it because you are asking a question, is notice mandatory for termination of a lease? Google will turn up and tell you, yes, such and such judgment says it is mandatory. But have you understood what the period of notice necessary for a manufacturing lease is, for a non-manufacturing leases, etc.? What is a month-to-month tenancy? Probably not. Right? So the ability to have a greater degree of learning, to some extent, we are making a conscious choice not to go in for that. We are making a conscious choice to avoid that. Why? Nobody forced you to use Google. How many of you in this class have been asked by your teachers to use Google? One. Okay. Two have been asked by teachers or professors to use Google. Okay. For all your research? No. How many of you have been asked by a teacher or professor to use AI for your research? As an experiment, as a part of a class project, you leave that aside. But generally, for all research you do, please use AI. Have you been given such instructions? Okay, let me ask you a more important question. This is the most important question to me. How many of you have been told by your professors not to touch a commentary? One? You've been told not to read a commentary. No, that's my question. So how many of you have been told not to touch a commentary, not to use a commentary? How many of you have been told Mullah on Transfer of Property Act is poisonous? It is unconstitutional, don't touch it. How many? Zero? You then made a choice. You went to Google, you went to AI, Chat GPT, whatever else you are using, correct? You made that choice. You've then made the conscious choice, and this is what Google is not telling you, Chat GPT is not telling you, nobody is telling you. You've made a choice to choose to learn less perspective. You've chosen it. You've chosen that. You've chosen that path. Okay. Now, I'm going to take away from criticism against you to something that's definitely helpful to you or sort of is in your praise. The ability that Google, as a first step of, I'm going to call it the first building block of artificial intelligence, but I'm actually grateful that he called calculator the first step. That puts me in the same era of artificial intelligence in some way. But jokes aside, I'm just saying Google as the first step and then AI as the next step. All right. The ability that you all have to be able to marshal resources from, let us say, for example, an American journal, an American university, which the commentaries, etc., which I had relied upon 25 years ago, definitely there is a lot of plus in Google. There's definitely a lot of benefit in being able to use some of these tools. But my point to you is, I think what we have gone and put ourselves in the situation is that we think it is a pure and simple and more efficient substitute. I am here to tell you that it is not. It is not a substitute for your learning. It is in fact detrimental sometimes to your learning. Please take this caution as coming from somebody with nothing but your best interest at heart. I am not saying don't use AI. I am definitely not saying don't use Google. I use Google 50 times a day. I'll be the first one to put my hand up, and I'll take Rishabh's caution on how much harm I'm causing the environment. A lot of what I search on Google may be irrelevant to anybody's life and consequence, but I do it anyway. How far is KLE College from the nearest Pizza Hut? Totally irrelevant to my life, but I find out anyway because I'm curious. Because when I was in Nagarbavi, there was no Pizza Hut. In Nagarbavi, I'm talking about 96 to 2001. But in Nagarbavi stage 2, I want to know how many Pizza Huts there are. It is just curiosity, right? Completely irrelevant. Will I ever come to Nagarbavi second stage and use Pizza Hut? Short answer is no. But I'll do it anyway by way of searching on Google. Yes, I will. My point is different. My point is, yes, I take the point that Google can be, or use of these servers can be damaging to the environment, but dehorse that, you please use it. I'm not saying don't use it at all. Use it with caution, care, but not as a substitute for your learning. That is, I think, at the heart of what I want to tell you. It can supplement, but not substitute. Remember that if you seek to learn and progress. Now, I'll go one step further. How many of you want to get into practice of law? That is going into courts, cross-examining, arguing, things like that. Feel free to put your hands up. All teachers and professors, please close your eyes. Many of them may be shy. The truth won't come out otherwise. Okay, about 15 of you. All right. How many of you want to get into a well-paying corporate job? Again, professors, please close your eyes. Okay, so about 10 of you. What do the others want to do, right? How many of you want to get into academics? A couple of you, right? So the rest of you are not decided on what you want to do, maybe. I'll give you the benefit of doubt. But the reason I'm asking you this is, I think you must understand that the role a lawyer plays in different functions actually varies. If you're in a law firm versus if you're in litigation versus if you're in-house versus if you're in an NGO or you get into policy, you want to get into the IAS, various roles means various different functions that you'll have to perform. This also means that your understanding of the rigor of the law is varying and will vary depending on what role you finally take up. Therefore, one size does not fit all. My counterpoint, and I'm taking from what Aishwarya said and Rishabh said, AI doesn't know that. AI doesn't make the difference between who's searching for that bit of information and whether you are asking it from the point of view of a litigation lawyer or an in-house counsel or somebody else. AI doesn't know that. AI doesn't know. I mean, okay, sure, it could know theoretically in that the camera could be on, it detects your face, it does face recognition, and therefore it really knows who you are. It's possible. But the average search that you perform on ChatGPT doesn't really know. Suppose you use your phone versus you use your friend's phone. For the same set of queries, it'll give you pretty much the same answer. Or till such time that it says, okay, I'm not going to give you the same answer anymore. And that's the point he was making. You don't even know it's giving you the correct answer. Am I saying for a minute that every commentary, there is no mistake at all in Mullah's Transfer of Property Act? No, of course I'm not saying that. Am I saying that no judgment is wrong? Of course I'm not saying that. That's a completely different point. The point I'm making is that the way in which you approach AI, the way in which you approach learning is today, in my respectful submission to all of you, completely misplaced. Please reorient yourself to how this has to be done properly. Please benefit from it. We did not have the benefit of it. Please benefit from it, but with care and caution. That's the only point I wanted to underscore when it came to that. Now, I don't quite know who's come up with the theme for the conference and the topics of the present discussion, but I will just make a few remarks on that. In the unlikely event that any of you wants to take up criminal prosecution, I will nonetheless quickly dwell on some of those aspects because that's part of what your topic says. Very quickly, Rishabh made these points, so therefore I won't take too much more time on it. It talks about investigation, then 4 steps. I'll just point out what your theme says. It talks about investigation. Where's that? Yeah. Prevention, investigation, adjudication, and sentencing, and how AI can be used. Certainly, please understand the short point is this. Prevention has got nothing to do with the government or the state. For prevention, please use it. Nobody's stopping you. If you are able to prevent crime in some way, but does it mean surveillance? You don't want to get into a police state? You need to be careful. Investigation, I'd be very careful because if the investigation is not done properly, if you use AI in a manner in which the results of what could be are modified, that can be a ground of acquittal. That can be a ground on which you question the charge sheet. So I'd be very, very careful. Sentencing, I'd be extraordinarily circumspect. I want to offer you 2 perspectives there. I don't know how many of you have heard of this author, Professor Daniel Kahneman. Famously, he was the first non-economist to be awarded the Economics Nobel Prize. He's written a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. I'd encourage all of you to read it. He's also co-authored another book called Noise, which is something that Rishabh alluded to, which is on sentencing policy in the US and how there are so many aspects that bring in noise in decision making, which are or distractions, like race prejudice, like how somebody did an empirical study to find that people of different races, same set of circumstances and facts, are given different sentences. You could use AI to analyze this data, place it before judges to sensitize them, but you can't use AI to actually do the sentencing. I think that is the important tool. You can use AI to analyze data. You can use AI. I use AI. Let me confess, finally, after telling you all the pitfalls about it, but really as a glorified paralegal. I use it to sift through some data, to put something together, but I never put it in court without checking it myself. That is, I think, a very important metric that you must all bear in mind. Now, with the permission of the chair, I'm going to take 2 minutes. And as I said, I'll go off topic and tell you something that you all need to know. A lot of you are, I understand, anxious for jobs, internships, etc. For the love of God, please don't make these fundamental mistakes. I've seen any number of students across colleges, nothing specific about KLE. Please tell your friends in other colleges as well. You send emails with BCC to about God knows how many people, wherever you find those emails, and then ask for an internship or a job. Please don't ever do that. I for one, will never give a position to somebody who does that. Many of you either don't bother writing up a proper CV, or obviously the CV is prepared on using some AI tool. Please don't do that. Please put forward the real you. Anybody who's been a recruiter will tell you that they really want to know who you are. They don't really care about what Claude or Chat GPT thinks you should be. Nobody cares about that, frankly. Uh, And the last thing I wanted to say is that there is a human element, and that human element is very much present in court. It is very much present in the discretion that judges exercise. It's very much present in the heart of the Constitution. And that you are all at the risk of losing if you choose to surrender that extraordinarily important fundamental right and liberty that you have, which is your right to privacy, your right to choose. Please choose carefully. Thank you.
Thank you for again stressing on the point that has been the theme for this session so far, retaining the humanness of processes that should be human, and careful adoption of new disruptive technologies. But I would like to confirm with the organizers, Tanmay sir, do we have some time to take questions from the audience? All right, so we do have some time. So before we close, if there are any questions or anything that you'd like to discuss, yeah, please state your name and class also if you're a student.
The statement that made that we deliberately make a choice of choosing AI. I would like to contradict by saying that we are forced to choose AI. Because if I'm not using AI, I'm not considered updated. If my friend is taking some 30 minutes to write an assignment, it does not make much sense for me to spend the whole day spending in the library to write the same assignment. So what is your view on this?
Again, I don't entirely agree, because again, you're making a choice. You're choosing to be in a contest with your friend. Go for it. I'm not stopping you. Right? Did anybody put you in that contest? No. Do you want to learn? Sure. You don't want to learn, you want to be in a contest, good for you. That's my point. I'm sorry, but this is something that today every one of you is just in a mad and complete race. All you're ever doing is looking at what your friend is doing, what your neighbor is doing. What do you want to do? Do you really want to learn? That's fine. Do you really want to learn something? Please do. Right? That is the choice you have to make. If you want to be in a race with your friend, perfectly fair. I mean, that's again a choice you're making. That's my point. I mean, again, at the cost of repetition, whether you use, the traditional library method first and then AI, or AI first and then the library method, these are tools that will change. Look, I'm not for a minute saying all technology is bad. Nobody's saying. Not one person on this team. I mean, nuclear energy is a great example. It was new technology. Everybody said it's dangerous. It has had some benefits. It has had some seriously damaging consequences. Everybody agrees that you have to use it with caution. Nobody knows what some military dictatorship is going to do with nuclear technology. So everybody is living in fear. It is a fact of life. It's really the same thing in many ways with any technology, and that's equally true for AI. If you say, look, here is what is it that you're telling me? You're telling me, oh, look, North Korea has a nuclear missile. Should we not keep one? What if they bomb us? That's your argument. Basically, you have your answer.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please go ahead. Also state your name and class. Yeah.
And like you mentioned, I would like to put a point that AI is already in use with regard to the postmortem analysis or all these autopsy. Don't you think that influences the criminal investigation department's reports? So,
Very good question. Unfortunately, I ran out of time and I couldn't dwell on it. You're absolutely right. AI is being used in courts. AI is being used in investigation. It is not that it isn't. The point I was making was that one has to use it with a lot of care and caution. What is AI being used for? To the largest extent, it is to be able to tell you, like we took the example of toxicology or post-mortem. It is that I, as a as a person who's a pathologist or something like that, I perform the autopsy. I come to some conclusion. I run those the parameters on an AI model that there is to ensure that I haven't missed any, right? But the ultimate analysis is mine, the report is mine, I sign off on it and not the AI model. And I think that is the important distinction I'm making for you. It is certainly useful. You should probably make it a more systematic use for ensuring that there is no slippage through the cracks. For example, toxicology, I don't know how many of you have read Agatha Christie and so on, where there are certain, I mean, you're talking about over a century ago, popular crime fiction authors wrote about toxins that disappear from your bloodstream after some time, right? It's nothing new. Now, today you have enough technology to be able to trace it. Should that be employed just to ensure that the pathologist hasn't missed something? Absolutely. Why not? But should that be the basis of the conviction of the charge sheet? I would still say no. And I think that's where I stand.
Yep. So we have time for one last question. So yeah. Yes.
about the suggestions and how it should be regulated. So, what are your suggestions on it that so that it should be included?
Is it right? Like is that question addressed to any person specific?
Bishop sir said there should be a good checks and balances.
That's
right?
it.
How it should be.
So, you see, when it comes to technology, the
Good.
problem is
So when it comes to technology, what we generally start off with is generally we start with saying ban. Ban this, ban that. That's not the right approach. When it comes to regulation, like I said, the Gujarat High Court policy on what you should do, what you should not do, and it's an ever evolving space where